We will review why we do things the way we do and gain insight into which details we must pay attention to. You have received handouts for future reference. Please help me welcome Dr. Cheryl and her panelists, Cynthia Beck, Lori Rangel, and Lou Rangel.
Toastmasters. What exactly are the protocols and what function do they serve? I remember coming to my first Toastmaster meeting and I saw people standing up and saying certain things and they sounded pretty witty, but they were doing very specific things in the meeting and I didn't quite understand it, but it slowly sunk in once I watched it over and over again. We're going to talk about exactly these things today. My name is Dr. Cheryl Kasdorf, and I have achieved several educational awards. I am an Advanced Communicator Bronze, a competent leader. I finished the Visionary Communication Pathway. I'm on the last level of the Presentation Mastery Pathway, and I finished the first level of Engaging Humor Pathway. I've been in Toastmasters almost 3 years. I originally came on the recommendation of a business coach, because I needed to develop my speaking skills. And for my own personal use, I wanted to be able to do videos, which I'm doing now, which is great progress. The panelists that have agreed to come here today and speak with us, the first one is, they're all distinguished Toastmasters, and the first one is Cynthia Beck. She's the Vice President of Membership at the Sedona Sunrise Toastmasters, and she has loved Toastmasters since she was introduced to it as a teenager. She has been an active member for more than 13 years, and she enjoys watching new members grow. She also, outside of Toastmasters, sings in a choir and volunteers for the Chamber of Commerce of Sedona. She's a master hypnotherapist at Sedona as well. Next, She is the treasurer of our club here at Cottonwood Toastmasters. She's been a Toastmaster since April of 2007, and she has received the Educational Award of Distinguished Toastmasters twice over. 3 times. Okay, she says that she's been able to achieve anything that she wants to because of her experience in Toastmasters. She's been able to give independent speeches to many companies and be the master of ceremonies of different organizational events like Relay for Life. In her business life, she's an assigning agent for LCR Mobile Notary Service and a real estate agent. Let's welcome Lori. Our third panelist is Lou Rangel. Yes, there's a connection. Currently, he is the Vice President of Education of Cottonwood Toastmasters. He joined Toastmasters in March of 2012, and he has received 2 Distinguished Toastmasters of Educational Awards. He has held district offices, including area governor and division governor, and served as the district spring conference chair in 2015. He has served in various positions in this club over the years, and outside of Toastmasters, he serves on 3 boards for nonprofits. Welcome, Lou. Perhaps the most important element of success in a Toastmasters meeting is for members to enjoy ourselves and to do it with enthusiasm. I'm going to ask the panelists to chime in on this, and as Dave mentioned with the timing before, I'd like to keep the comment short, so at 30 seconds the green light is going to go on. So try to keep things short, even if you're giving a very colorful story. How does it show for members enjoy themselves. Cynthia, in the meeting?
How does it show?
Yeah.
I think people laugh, people are relaxed, people feel safe, that they aren't going to be ridiculed or put down at any level, and they are having a good time.
Thank you. Lori, what do you have to add to that?
I feel that when they're engaged, they're enjoying themselves. When you have the interaction between the person up front and the audience, the members, then that shows how much they're enjoying coming. The main part is when they're here at a Toastmaster meeting, is regardless of what's going on, have fun, enjoy it, and you'll learn more that way.
Thank you, Lori. Lou, do you have anything else to add?
Yes, I would say, one of the sure signs of people having fun, members, is attendance. Because you're asking people to invest an hour of their time out of a busy schedule, and it's an investment that you cannot bank. You have to decide how to use it wisely. So for members come to our meetings week after week and spend that hour with us, then they're enjoying themselves because they're getting a return on their investment. And the return is having fun. Because nobody would come here for an hour and not have fun. They would find something else to do.
Great. Your first handout is a Toastmaster's promise. Everybody who's officially become a member read this promise. And it's a promise to ourselves as well as to the club. And regular membership attendance is the first line in it. And it continues on with preparing all your projects to your best ability, to provide fellow members with helpful constructive evaluations, which is, I see that here too. And bring guests to meetings. We've seen a lot of guests come lately. And to adhere to the guidelines and rules for all Toastmasters meetings. So that's one of the things that we're going to go into. We have a Toastmaster's etiquette. Why is there etiquette? What does the etiquette do for us in a meeting? I'll take volunteer.
It helps keep the meeting in an even flow so that we don't have dead time or dead space, and we can do all the things that we need to do within the hour that we have.
Yeah, so when we pay attention to the small details, we get a lot out of it. And when we follow the agreed upon practices, then it goes smoothly. How does it serve our own self-improvement? Cynthia?
Well, I think that Toastmasters protocol has two really basic reasons. One is respect. We have an hour. There are a lot of people in the room. And so we time everything to give everybody a chance to get up. And it's protocol and etiquette respects that timeline. I think the other thing is really to what Lori was saying, is it pulls the energy of the meeting. So you don't have any downtime, or at the end of the meeting it just goes, bye. So those really are two reasons, etiquette for respect and energy.
Thank you, Cynthia. Lou, do you happen to know any of the history behind the etiquette from Ralph Smedley?
I know that Ralph Smedley wanted to form an organization to teach young people at that time, when the thought of Toastmasters would come into existence, how to be more engaged with the community within themselves. He wanted to provide an avenue for them to better themselves in communicating with others. And so he came up with this concept, and it's been evolving ever since. I mean, we just recently had our new evolution with the Pathway program. But Toastmasters is constantly looking for ways to allow us to better communicate with each other.
Great, thanks. Control of the meeting is one of the big points of etiquette, and especially control of the lectern. Because control of the meeting is done through control of the lectern. Now I'm using this lectern, that's the usual one that we use. As you saw today, I started the meeting as president by opening the meeting, and then when I introduced the Toastmaster, I handed over control to the Toastmaster. In between, the lectern should never be left unattended. Is there some creative way that possibly you have had to use in order to not leave the lectern unattended? Lori's laughing, she's trying to answer this one.
I am notorious for not leaving the lectern unattended. However, there's sometimes I'm unable to get somebody's attention to bring me something, so when I have to go get something, I take the lectern with me to make sure it's not unattended.
Is there any other way that you would suggest to solve that problem?
Keep it on wheels.
Yeah, usually the lectern is front and center so that everybody can see the person in the lectern.
Yes.
Right. Control of meeting passes from person to person through a handshake. Now, at the TLI training, there was one member who commented that during flu season, they didn't want to shake hands because that's the most common route of infection for the flu virus. And so they did high fives in the air to each other. They kept the etiquette while they were trying to respect their wanting to not spread the flu. Can one of you comment about, well, I'd like to act some of this out. But any other comments about handshakes?
One of the things that I've noticed at meetings is where a person who has control of that function of the meeting stands. Often, a table topics person will come all the way up to the lectern, or the general evaluator is standing in a position that makes it hard. So it's really important to kind of know where you're supposed to be standing and how far you're supposed to be coming before you actually do your role. People stand at the edge, it's hard to shake their hands.
Okay, so the person so act that out with me. If you're coming up to do your role here, where are you going to come?
I might come over here.
Okay.
That would make it hard for you to shake my hand.
Right, and you don't want to do this, right?
Right.
So you're going to come behind the lectern and shake hands.
Yes.
And
You can either cross in front or in back.
okay, so it's my option whether I go in front or back of these. And sometimes it's a matter of seating arrangements where
That's true.
I could strategically, like the Toastmaster's on that side. So as a speaker, I'm sitting on this side so that we can meet in the middle and he can go back that way and I can go back this way.
Right.
Great, thanks. Any other comments about handshakes?
The handshake should always be initiated by the person that has control of the lectern. They reach out to the person coming up. You want to make sure you don't cross in front of each other, like Cheryl said. If the Toastmaster's over here, and even though you're sitting next to the Toastmaster, you want to come over here so that you're in and out from different angles and not crossing paths in front of each other.
Great. Anything else?
The applause also should be started by the person in control of the lectern. The handshake is the way of releasing the lectern to the next person. The applause is the way of bringing them up here to release the lectern to them.
Sure. And the applause should go all the way to the handshake.
Yes.
Never stop the applause while the person is walking up to the front, because then it creates a time of awkwardness for the individual walking up to the front. The applause is recognition of that person that's being brought up to the front for their accomplishment or their contribution to the meeting.
And that brings up 2 points. If you're the one coming up to the lectern, be as timely as you can to come up here. And if you're in the audience or you're clapping, make sure that you clap all the way till that person reaches the lectern.
You can also, in the spirit of time, because we talked about time in the very beginning, you have an agenda, and if you know that you're going to be the individual coming up to the front to discuss your roles or share what your responsibilities are, know that in advance. Don't let it appear that it's a shock that you were introduced as a grammarian or you were introduced as a timer. You already know. So in the spirit of time, say, make yourself available to come up here as quickly as possible so we give the speaker and the table topic respondents and the other functionaries ample time. Too many times I see people kind of drag their feet, just go slow, and that takes away from other parts of the meeting. So please know what your roles are and know when you're going to be called, and then come as quickly as you can.
Great.
Can I ask a question? What if someone does, the person who's involved with lectern doesn't offer his hand? Do you just not shake hands, you just nod, or what do you do?
Well, this meeting is to inform everybody that that's their duty as the role. Yeah, you can take the initiative and shake hands with the person if they're not doing it, but this is to reinforce the idea that it's part of the function of your role to shake hands in the lectern. The other part of the control of the lectern changing is acknowledgement. When we pass control, we shake hands, but we also use their title. What is a proper title, like if it's president, general evaluator, what can we call it?
For example, Madam General Evaluator or Mr., you would always do it by their title, Madam or Mr., not by their names. You can say the name as Mr. Toastmaster, but you acknowledge them by their title.
Right, so it's Madam Toastmaster or Mr. Toastmaster. It's not Toastmaster. Toastmasters, just
Yeah,
Toastmasters, yeah. No. And you can also say a few cordial words. This is especially useful during table topics. Somebody want to comment on that?
With table topics, you want to initiate just a little bit like a teaser when you're doing the table topics master position. Same with when you're called up, it's master or Mr. or Madam Table Topics Master. Again, by their title, but as the Table Topics Master, you want to just give a teaser about the theme of the day and what Table Topics is about.
And also, after a table topics presentation, you can show that you've been attentive to their speech by saying a few words about either agreeing or making some comment about what they said. Any other things you want to talk about with passing the control of the meeting by using the lectern? Any other points?
Yes, if you are giving a speech and you do this quite frequently where you need to set up props, have that set up in advance. So therefore, when the Toastmaster has introduced you, you've made arrangements to have things moved and get things set up before the speech starts, and then tear it down during the 2-minute evaluation portion.
What you may not know is that there's a position called Sergeant of Arms. Richard is holding that position now. He's in charge of setting up the room beforehand. Well, the Sergeant of Arms can also be called to help with arranging the room when you're giving a speech. Alternatively, you can ask anybody to do it, whether it's a Toastmaster or just somebody else to help. But just know that the Sergeant of Arms has that duty to take care of the arrangement of the room. Why do we clap when after a speech or when people are coming up?
That is a very dank question. I think there's 2 reasons. The first reason is that many of us struggle to do anything in public. We come here to improve our skills, we may be automatically shy. So it is an encouragement and also a reward, and it keeps the energy in the meeting high. Go to a meeting where everybody just sits blank, it's very unfun. So applause is part of that. Recognition, I think, is
Recognition, appreciation, support, energy. Anything else?
All of the above.
And we talked about before, it creates a smooth transition from one speaker to the next. As a speaker, there's something that I found in some of these rules that I'd like a discussion about and what it actually means. But it said proper etiquette requires that as a speaker you wait until the Toastmaster is seated before speaking. So you're not going to start your speech while they're still walking to find their seat. But it also said if the Toastmaster of the day follows etiquette procedures, they will not be seated until they're addressed by the Toastmaster. So I'm thinking it means you can shake the Toastmaster's hand as a speaker when you're come up to the lectern, and then requirement of,
And you would say, thank you, Mr. or Madam Toastmaster, because you're thanking them for turning the lectern over to you.
but I know I've been guilty of this. Sometimes I'm such a hurry to start my speech that, especially if somebody's walking all the way around the room to find their seat, I wanna wait, I actually wanna wait until they sit down before I start the speech. So that could create a big amount of time while you're waiting for that person to sit down. What do you do during that time?
So I think that this has to do with Sergeant at Arms and meeting setup. The Toastmaster should be close to the lectern. We couldn't have a seat that the Toastmaster sits in, whoever that is that week. So it makes it easy to turn the lectern over back and forth without that gap of long walks and lots of applause.
Great, so seating arrangements is one.
Exactly.
Is there anything else if you're presented at that time?
I think sometimes we come to the meetings and we're not totally prepared for what we're gonna be doing during the course of the meeting. If you know that the Toastmaster is sitting on that side of the room, you know that you're gonna be vacating the stage on this side of the room. So it would be in your best interest to sit there. If they're coming from that side and you're gonna be exiting this side, then sit on this side. Sit on the side that will make it easier to minimize the downtime from when the person leaves the lectern to when they sit down. Rather than if they're coming from this side, but they sit over there and they have to walk all the way around, that's gonna take up time. So be conscious of where you're seating and with the other person that you're gonna be engaging in conversation with their seating before you select your seat.
I know in some clubs they have table tents for the functionary duties. And we could consider using that in our club in order to make sure that the seating arrangements are conducive of a flow of the meeting. That's something we could talk about.
Through the years, we have been on and off with that, tried different things, and haven't really found in this club the right flow of doing that. But table tents do work, and we do have them in the box.
What would be a con of the table tents for the functionaries? Why would we not want to do it?
I don't think it's a question of not wanting to do that. It's very frustrating when supplies don't get turned in. And so when you get ready to set up for the following week's meeting, you don't have that particular tent, or you don't have that topper. So keeping track of our supplies seems to be an issue, because again, if the same person isn't breaking down the meeting room, then somebody may put something someplace else. Normally that's where we don't put it, that's where it ends up. So when you go back the following week and you try to find it, you struggle finding it. That would be the only con I could think of in tents. Because I've seen clubs use them and use them effectively, but I've also seen clubs attempt to use them and they struggle.
Because some are missing.
Exactly.
In our club, it is the role of the Sergeant at Arms to make sure that all the placards are returned. We really haven't run into that because one person is assigned to do that, and we just make sure that that person gets those placards. If you have people coming and going in roles such as Sergeant at Arms, sometimes it is a challenge. But that is really the Sergeant at Arms' responsibilities, is to take care of the club materials.
Right.
In education, one sergeant of arms teaches the next one, as they're going out, teaches the one coming in, this is what you need to do and this is how you need to do it.
Great. As a speaker,
What is a tent? What are you talking about?
piece of paper and a tent.
It has your name or your title on them.
I'm sorry, I just didn't understand.
Oh, no, that's fine.
That's a good question. The dang question.
And that was the main response.
Okay, then I've got a dang question. What are some of the things the speaker should not do when you're giving your prepared speech? What are some of the mistakes that a speaker can make in terms of interacting with the audience? Did any come to mind?
I would say mistake is a strong word. I don't think anybody comes up here and gives a speech with the intent of having mistakes. Could it be something they need to learn, to overcome? Absolutely. But the only way they're going to be able to overcome is to have it addressed to them with a possible solution to how to overcome it. And that's gonna come with time. And the other part will be observing other speakers. Because we all have a tendency to have our own individual obstacles that we all have to address, but we also have some common ones that we face. So when you watch other speakers, maybe more experienced, more knowledgeable, more comfortable speakers, watch them and see how they address some of the issues. And you can pick up tips that way, so that when you go and you practice your speech at home, you can make sure that you don't have those same obstacles.
Let me rephrase that. Not necessarily a mistake, but what are some of the protocols for speakers that are maybe easy to break, or some of the protocols that you might not be aware of initially, but you might get feedback during a speech evaluation?
I think it's really important to allow a speaker the flexibility to be creative, but also that everything a speaker does is done on purpose. So there's a general feeling that you don't really want to turn your back to the audience. However, if that is part of the speech for a theatrical reason, then of course it's okay to do that, but it has to be part of the plan. To wander, to sort of fidget, those kinds of things are what we do when we first start. But really, movement should be planned in a speech.
Great.
Yes, make your gestures count. I think another thing that we need to focus on is we create our own introduction for the Toastmaster. The introduction basically needs to be what qualifies you to give this speech, or a little teaser about what the speech is. For example, if you're giving a speech on how to butcher a cow and you've never done it before, you're not qualified to give this speech, unless you qualify that by, according to my research, this is what I found out. And that's what qualifies you to give that speech.
You should never apologize
Yes.
for your speech content, because they don't know. And when you start apologizing for what you're about to say or your speech, you're automatically going to lose engagement with the audience. Because if you're apologizing, why should I listen? Why should I hear what you have to say? So never apologize. If you make a mistake while you're speaking, don't apologize for that. Just incorporate that as part of your speech. Because they don't know if it was or wasn't. But the minute you do acknowledge it, that sets into a very bad frame.
Adding on to that, you don't want to come up and sound so nervous. They don't need to know that. They want to know that you're confident in what you're doing, you've practiced your speech, and you know everything about your speech. And what a lot of members forget is, if you're giving a speech and there's something that you add into your speech that you did not intend to, you did not practice it, but it came to your mind at that point, or something that you forgot, we don't know that. We're assuming that the speech that you gave us is the exact speech you intended to give us. So don't forget that I forgot to tell you about something.
I'd like to address that as well. The general evaluator's job is to help define what the roles are supposed to be. If you make a mistake and you acknowledge it, you're actually taking the general evaluator's job. Interrupting meetings, calling points of order, those kind of things can be totally avoided if the general evaluator is doing their job in evaluating the roles, how the meeting went, and what could have been done to make the meeting flow better.
Great. Would somebody like to comment about saying thank you at the end of the speech?
You don't ever want to thank the audience. You do not want to end the speech with thank you. The audience is thanking you for being there. You want to end your speech with Mr. Toastmaster or Madam Toastmaster, addressing the person that introduced you to bring them back up here. And that's how you want to end your speech. When you say thank you, then they get the impression that they're not there for any specific reason, they're just there. But they will thank you for being there to speak to them.
add on to that, that the end of your speech is what you're leading the audience with. And you want it to have an impact. Thank you has no impact.
Right.
Lou, do you have anything to say on this?
No, they covered it.
Now, not all clubs use the counter with a clicker or a bell, but our club does. It's to make the speaker aware of the distracting words that they're using. But it can be controversial. Would one of you like to speak to that?
I hate the damn weather.
I like it.
So it is an opinion. If the counter is doing their job and I hear that I had 47 ahs, I'm going to pay more attention. The club that I grew up in, that is how we managed our ahs. The clicker can sometimes cause more in that it's jarring. I prefer not, but other people have had different experiences.
I am the complete opposite with that. I believe that the clicker will bring immediate attention to when you have said something that is a filler or something that does not fit in with your speech. And it also helps you to learn how to ignore distractions. I have found in many times the clubs that we have visited that did not use the clicker, if somebody opens the door, everybody stops and looks. If you're accustomed to learning how to get past distractions such as the clicker, then something like that would not affect you at all.
The custom in this club is to not click on the speakers, but to click on everybody else, except guests. Now, as a speaker, you can request to have clicks if you want to be trained, or as a functionary, you could request to not be clicked if it's too jarring.
I'd like to add a little bit more to the previous question. The perception of the clicker being positive or negative is how it's introduced. If you introduce it as a reminder that it's a distraction, then your whole focus is always going to be that it's a distraction. But think back to your first time coming to Toastmaster. How many times have you used filler words in your everyday conversation? I will tell you personally, a lot. Because I wasn't aware that I was using the filler words constantly in my everyday conversation with my friends, my co-workers, neighbors, whatever. It wasn't ingrained in me that I was using filler words. The clicker made me realize, man, I'm using that a lot. And I'll give you a classic example. We used to have a member here. The first time this individual did a table topic response, the clicker must have gone off 17 times in a minute and a half to 2 minute presentation. A year later, I was at this individual's club. That same person gave a table topic response, and the clicker only went off 7 times. So did that speaker learn? In my opinion, he did. Would he have learned if it wasn't a clicker? If he wasn't made aware that he was using filler words? Possibly, but not likely. So if you look at the clicker as a positive reminder that I need to strive to eliminate filler words, it's going to be a positive tool.
Great, and everybody can decide for themselves. I found that being in Toastmasters and having to be aware of the filler words and pauses and double clutches that I did here, I started being aware of that outside of Toastmasters. So in any way we do it, the awareness of the distracting words is important.
I'd like to just point out that we do disagree in Toastmasters.
Yes.
And often something like that would be left to a vote of the majority of the membership, and we are democratic. But it's okay to disagree and have different experiences.
Great, and that's one of the, maybe the smaller things that we can disagree on, but there are these etiquette guidelines in place so that we can agree on something. It's something that has been laid down over the years in Toastmasters so that when we fall into place with it, everything goes more smoothly. There's a lot more resources in the handouts here. You can look at those later. There's a whole 4 pages about etiquette, and I included as well, I have a sheet about the functionaries, which we won't have time to get to today, but maybe we'll have another meeting about it.
I encourage all of you, even those that are just members now, to go visit other clubs. Because Lori and I have been, and I think Cynthia would agree with that as well. In all my years in Toastmasters, I've yet to visit 2 clubs that have the same agenda, same format in their meetings. I've been in clubs in San Antonio, here, Phoenix, Tucson, elsewhere. Nobody has the same agenda. I mean, we follow the same format, but how they go about conducting their meeting varies from one club to the other.
And I think that's what gives a club its flavor. And it allows certain people to be attracted to one club versus a different club. That's, I think, what gives it flavor.
And if I may add, we can always add things to our club format, as well as we can always subtract things. The key is to experiment, just find out what the club feels very comfortable doing, and then proceed with that. And to eliminate those that make members feel very uncomfortable. Because again, we only have an hour.
To add on to that, when we visited other clubs, there's things that they've done in their clubs that we've brought back to this club. Some of them we've adopted, some of the things the club didn't care for, and we didn't adopt. But it gives you the idea to go out, visit other clubs, and see what they're doing. And maybe bring back some great ideas to our club and to help to improve our club.
This panel discussion may have stirred up some questions in you. We invite you to talk to us separately after the meeting or in further weeks. We're also available by phone and email. I thank my panelists for being here, Cynthia, Lori, and Lou. They have added their numerous years of experience and depth of practice with Toastmasters. I thank you, audience, for your questions, for your attentiveness. And I invite you to continue this discussion outside of this format. Mr. Toastmaster.
I believe everybody has